Race relations in the United States today, it's a marvelously complicated question. There was an article in the Washington Post today about some of Obama's workers being disturbed, or more than disturbed, horrified by some of the racial responses they'd had when they go ask people to vote for Obama. So race in America is certainly better than it's ever been. I don't believe that racism of one sort or another is curable. I think it's always something that's there for people who need it to use it, whether it's racism, anti-Semitism, anti-Catholicism, anti-immigration. There are people for whom that will always give them some kind of sustenance. And I think part of the problem is that we think we can do away with that, and we can't. And I think also that part of the problem is that we ask ourselves to cure ourselves. I think that there are still elements of racism in anyone, no matter how much they believe they've overcome it. It's still there. And to try to kid yourself and think that it's not makes it harder. I think it's important to recognize that human beings tend to think in a binomial way. We think yes or no. We think good or bad. We think black or white. And that's in our minds. That's the structure of our minds. And we have to struggle against it, but we can't pretend that it's not there. And I think sometimes we ask people to shed that from themselves, to free them from it. And people can't. It's there. It's part of our mental structure. And I think it's very crucial that people recognize that other people have that. It's the way our minds are constructed. Our minds it may have to do with something like computers with on-off. Our electrons work the same way in our brain. They're either clicking on or clicking off. And that's the way we work. We think, the first thing we think is a yes or no answer, a two-sided answer. And then we learn that, in fact, there are many two-sided answers in the middle of those things, that it isn't black or white, that there are grays. It isn't good or bad. There are things in the middle that temper that. But as long as we pretend that we can overcome that, I think it causes us more grief. It's a long time since I've thought that question, how does one identify oneself? I think primarily, the primary identity is that we're members of the same species, and that's absolutely crucial to us, that our future depends on our realization that we're part of the same species, and that everything else is subservient to that. As long as we think of ourselves primarily as American or French or whatever, Iraqi, we're going to continue to divide and continue to find conflict. And I think that the hope is, I've been reading a lot about globalization, not just globalization as commerce, but globalization as concept, the way human beings have been globalizing ever since history began, before history. We came out of Africa and spread over the world. That was the first globalization. And I think that the kind of globalization we have now, where there's communication, instant and intimate communication between everybody in the world, might be what's going to save us from our various dooms.